Okay, and we're back with our recovery series for another week. This is one we've been excited about to bring for a while now. This is talking about getting outside and exercising. We've talked about this a numerous amount of times and kind of giving you a little bit of a hint here and there of the different activities we could do. But here's one we're going to really focus on just talking about the activities that we're going to go into. Now that we can go, kind of work on social distancing and still be active, and that will still work in these type of environments. We are going to touch on getting outside specifically in winter now that as this video is coming out, we are thinking about winter. But we're only going to touch on that briefly because I know in general, we have an exercising at home coming out right after this. And that's going to be really, really focused on specifically winter and what we're going through now, dealing with weather. In winter and wanting to get outside, there's a lot of options you can do. It's important to think about in winter that the reason that people are so wary of going outside is that staying warm, staying dry, and still having a fun time or a fun environment while doing these activities. That's the biggest challenge, right? So if we're going outside, we're going to be in the winter and we're going to exercise, we're thinking about some of the obvious things. Some of them is just getting outside, walking around the neighborhood and enjoying yourself. In this weather, it's great to choose things like skiing, snowboarding, hiking, snowshoeing, even cross-country skiing, because it's something that no matter the weather, you're going to be able to adapt to whatever the environment is. Most areas that are very popular for skiing and snowboarding already have snowmaking machines and things that are putting out snow, so you'll be able to do these activities and have a very fun day all around. You're also able to get a lot of season passes for these activities where you can either own the equipment and go and do it on public land, something like snowshoeing and cross-country skiing specifically, along also with hiking. And then if you can also buy a season pass for a mountain, you have the ability to do the snowboarding and the skiing. Now, obviously, during these exercises, you're spending most of your time enjoying yourself here. These are great activities for where you're constantly in a squat, you're doing low intensity exercise over a very long period of time. The best thing about winter is that it allows you to exercise for longer periods of time in colder weather where it's not, nearly as intense from the environmental factors, as long as you're able to be smart about how you're exercising in the winter itself. Want to make sure that we just kind of touch on everything. Another aspect that's great about the winter is that it actually, whether you like to admit it or not, it's really good for emphasizing doing household chores. With the change in seasons, you may have to clean out a yard, you may have to pick up sticks, you may have to shovel a driveway, you may have to shovel a walkway, things of that nature. These are great, like monthly things that you're going to need to do as the weather changes. That's going to motivate you to get outdoors and spend some time outdoors and get you moving and doing the things that you need. Also, by doing them on your own, you're going to save a good amount of money. So these are just basic things that we talk about when we say in the winter, getting outside, getting exercise, doing activity. I know it's challenging because some people just aren't winter people, but we wanted to give some specific examples for winter. So as we're talking about getting outside, you can go ahead and get outside right now. The hiking and camping are one of my favorite ones to do in the winter because, again, these are primarily low intensity. You're not necessarily doing anything that's going to be incredibly high in your heart rate, but you still get to enjoy yourself for possibly half a day to a day, and you don't really need that much equipment in order to do these things. For camping, it gets a little bit more specific because you need to have cold weather things. But as far as like hiking and that, most of the things that you're going to need, you're going to have right in your house. Now, we're going to talk about the things that you need to think about, specifically as far as gear when you're thinking about exercising in the cold. The important thing to think about is not just staying warm, but also making sure that you're staying dry. And one of the easiest ways to do this is kind of twofold. One, you want to make sure your outside layers, so the layers that are actually interacting with the environment, are going to be waterproof or at least somewhat water resistant in some way, shape, or form, depending upon what layer that is. So a good example of that being, I may not need waterproof gloves if I don't plan on digging through things, but I would be nice to have them be water resistant. So as the snow falls or as I do touch things that are possibly covered in snow or possibly wet, I don't have to worry that these are going to be wet for the rest of the time that I do any activity. While something that you might want to be waterproof or completely something like a Gore-Tex material. So basically it's really, really high water resistance, because if you're in snow for long enough, you'll kind of notice not everything is really perfect at being waterproof, but there is a good amount of stuff that is waterproof for very, very, very long periods of time. Something like your boots, your pants, your jacket, these are things that you're going to want to make sure that no matter how much, water, wind, snow it takes, it's going to keep all the layers underneath you dry. Now, since we're dressing up in layers, we want to make sure that our lower layers are designed to keep us warm. Now, the great thing about this is that in the winter, I've always felt it's much easier to manage your body temperature than it is when you're in summer environments. Because once you're hot, it tends to be hot. No matter how you change the clothing or what kind of layers you try to put on, if it's hot enough, you're always going to be hot. In the winter, if you layer up well enough, temperatures can go well into zero, and you can be fine going out there and enjoying yourself. It just depends how in depth you go into your layers. So our outside layer is going to be waterproof. Going under that, we want to have some type of breathable fibers to allow for heat to go from our body. Well, we don't really have to worry about the heat going from our body, but we want to have breathable layers that allow us to open up the vents that are in our waterproof areas and have the cold air come in and hit us if we are feeling overheated as we kind of go through activity. Our base layers, we want to have more of like an Under Armour or similar to like a dry fit, but basically you want layers that are going to help you keep heat right near your core. Great layers like this, they talk about like thermal pajamas. They talk about any kind of layering that's designed to help keep your body warm, but not even that, not trap sweat on this bottom layer. You want something that's going to make sure that as we do get kind of any kind of sweat buildup, it's not going to keep water close to our body, because that's going to end up making us cold later on if we have that layer of sweat there. So when we think about our layers, we want the layer closest to our body to in order to keep heat, but also not keep moisture. The layers over that, we want to make sure that it's going to be a little bit more breathable so that we can let out some of that evaporation, and we can also let in some cold air that we might want. And then we want to close that up with some type of windproof or waterproof layer that's going to help us regulate how we do things. When we think about our extremities, we're going to be thinking kind of in the same way. It is very possible to layer up our gloves where we'll have some type of glove liner followed by a very good weatherproof or so just whatever glove you really find that you like. But a lot of people like to go for those thick, weatherproof, water-resistant gloves. And then the same thing with your shoes. You'd start out with some type of wool sock or any sock that you feel is very comfortable and warm. And then you're going to go with a boot that obviously is going to be weather-resistant, like we've talked about. When you're able to layer up and have these things, it makes it that if you feel too warm, you can take these layers off and then still continue whatever you're doing. And then if you start to feel cold, you can put these layers back on. It is more of a learning process. So it's important that as you get these layers, almost every website will kind of help guide you through the outer core, inner core, all the different areas that you're going to want to work on as far as where layers should be where as you're kind of gearing this up. But again, many of you already have experience in the cold and you understand. You have a t-shirt, you put a sweatshirt over that, then you put a jacket over that. The only difference is, are you really thinking about sweat and things of that nature? But you understand basic layering. So I don't think we need to go too in depth into that. Now, it is important that we do think, even though we are layering really well, we want to make sure that we kind of keep a mindful note of any areas that specifically like the ends of our extremities and exposed surfaces. If you're going to get cold, it's going to be in these areas. So by that, I mean specifically, we want to make sure that when we do cover our feet, we have something on our feet that's going to keep us warm. We may want to put some type of hand warmers or foot warmers in our boots to help keep us warm. We may want to make sure that we buy our shoe maybe a half size bigger so we can layer up really well when we put our shoe in there. And we want to make sure that when we do our gloves, obviously we can work on those layers as well to keep our hands warm. Because as these areas get cold, it's going to be a problem. Now, related to that, we want to think about our face and neck. These are areas that typically we don't really think about protecting But if you're skiing, snowboarding, and things like that, when you're going 30, 40 miles an hour down a hill with the wind hitting you, these are areas that you really go, oh, this is crucial and this is key. Now that everyone's so much into buffs, I'm sure you guys are more aware of a neck buff that you can put on. It's even good enough to where it can go under a t-shirt or under a jacket, so it's completely sealed. You can also use a scarf or something of that nature. Either one is going to be able to cover not just your neck, but if you'd like, you can bring it up to your face, and that'll give you some nice coverage. Everyone's wearing face masks nowadays, and whether you realize it or not, hiking or walking or exercising in cold weather is actually a huge advantage when you actually have a face mask. I know we're already getting to that time of year where there's been a few days that have been very cold. And when I go outside, having that face mask is kind of a godsend. It gives me that little bit of extra warmth that I need so that I feel very comfortable. And I'm not really worried about being outside anymore. And I can still be comfortable with just kind of a t-shirt, a jacket, and just some sweatpants on. So I'm not really worried too much about layering just yet, but we're getting into that time of year. Now, the last thing you may want to think about is you may want to think about some type of eye protection like goggles or sunglasses. The reason why goggles are so widely used is that, one, the speed that you're going when you're doing any of these things, it stops the wind from directly hitting your face. And they have a big wide field of vision. You can still do this with a pair of sunglasses or something of that nature, but it's not going to be necessarily as warm. So you might want to think about, again, how are you going to keep any wind off of these areas of your face? Now, again, it might be a little weird to walk around wearing huge goggles. So just understand that depending on your activity and how extreme you're looking to go, that's why sunglasses might be a good option. It's never weird to go around in sunglasses in the winter also, because the snow is going to reflect a lot of the sunlight coming back up. So kind of a pro tip, sunglasses are a very useful thing to have when you're out snowshoeing, skiing, snowboarding, things of that nature. Now, we've talked about layering. We've talked about having, one of the great things that I want to mention about layering. It's okay to invest money into layering, because if you're layering wisely, the layers you're buying are going to be used in all the other seasons. So if you're using any type of like Under Armour dry fit as a bottom layer, that's going to be great for going into the spring and fall and having just a t-shirt over top. That's why you see so many athletes and so many commercials of people having an Under Armour with a t-shirt over it. That is a great basic way of just keeping yourself warm as you go into the spring and the fall. And even though it is really used heavily in the winter months, you're still going to be able to use that layer into spring and fall very, very easily. As we go off a little bit more, we go to higher up layers, the jackets that you get, depending upon what you spend, many of these jackets have inner shells that you can take out. So all of my winter jackets, and that's something that for me I think about, is I spend a little bit more money on my clothing so I get more use out of it, is that if I have an inner lining that's more of a sweatshirt lining that I can take out of my jacket, I now have a windproof, waterproof jacket, again, for the spring and fall that's going to keep in heat. But for the winter, it's not going to be warm enough. And then I have my liner that I just zip right in. And then now that I have my liner, I'm going to have a really great outside layer to work on, so I stay nice and warm throughout this time. Very similar with pants as well. Most snowboarding pants, and this is kind of like a generic thing for and I don't want to say for most people, but the legs can get cold, and the legs will get cold, obviously, but it kind of takes a lot for your legs to get like overly sweaty. So even though you're wearing some type of hiking winter pant that's a little bit heavier, most of those pants, unless they're good for like 0 and below, you're easily going to be able to wear in any type of pant weather. So even in the fall and the spring when it rains, it's still a great option to put on. You're not going to need to obviously layer underneath. You'll be able to just go directly into those kind of swishy or those nice, easy waterproof pants where you don't need to worry about it as much. And then also understand that any layer that you put under a snow pant that might be waterproof, that's what you're going to use in the spring and fall as well. And again, just because they're winter boots doesn't mean that you can't wear them at other times of the year, because again, it's just a waterproof boot. So whenever it's heavily raining or doing anything like that, the fall, the spring, all those times, as long as the weather is in any way, below 70 degrees, that boot is still going to be an appropriate thing to wear for you. So don't feel like you're getting gear that's only made for one time a year and one specific area of weather. You want to kind of think as you buy this gear, like, hey, like everything I buy is going to be good for other times. And what can each one of these each one of these clothes, like what's going to be its purpose and when can I utilize it at all times a year? Again, that's just a favorite one of mine. A lot of my winter jackets also, like for me, like I like to go out on my motorcycle a lot of times. A lot of my winter jackets are motorcycle jackets that are made for all weather with the padding taken out. So, or it's a snowboarding jacket that I used to wear all the time when I go snowboarding, or I take out, a liner or this and that, so it's not as intense. A great place to get these things, you're going to want to go to like REI and go to the clearance section. The outlets at like Columbia and things like that, they do really, really good deals on like last year's stuff or maybe gear that they're slightly changing or modifying for the incoming season. So you may be able to find like a $400 jacket for $200 and under almost every single time. Now, you don't ever really need a $400 jacket unless you would like to make that type of investment, because a jacket like that you kind of buy once and it should last forever. But you can also get something that's in like the $200 range that they then discount to under the $100 range. And then you're able to say, okay, like here's clothing that I may replace, I may not, but overall it's going to be really, really good for what I'm looking for. There's no real reason to have to pay full retail price for these. There's so many discount places where you can get this stuff. So it's important that you kind of shop around, ask around a little bit. Again, like always in the comments, if you have questions about this or resources, we'll just throw down some links and examples. But just talking about like the different outlets and things like that you can get to and kind of get last year's stuff. You can very easily get really, really good winter gear for a discount that kind of works really well for you. Now, again, we didn't want to go too much into winter, but again, we still spent 20 minutes talking about it. We're going to talk about just being outside and exercising in all weather, right? So one of the best things about this, and one of the easiest things about going outdoors and exercising, is there should be almost no cost. You're not paying for memberships, you're not paying for this, you're not paying for that. We're talking about just getting outdoors and enjoying yourself. One of the easiest ways to start this out is just exploring the various parks that are around you. Depending on where you live, upstate New York, the tri-state area, the Midwest, there's either state parks or national parks. This park system that's in the US is fantastic. And it's something that you really want to make sure to go out of your way and check out. Again, if you're having any trouble looking for these resources for your specific, like New York State park system, or I want to say it's the federal park system as well. Now I feel like I'm blanking on the name. Here, let's look this up really quick together to make sure I can give you the right name for this. I know it's probably the national park system. Yeah, okay. So really quick, we just looked up. If you ever want to check, you can always look up the National Park Pass. The National Park Pass is just for the U.S. National Park Service. So that's what you'd be specifically looking for, the U.S. National Park Service. And then you'd obviously be looking for it directly in your zip code or in your state to see what parks are near you. And then your state also has like the New York State Park Service. So you can look for individual parks and things that are in your area so you can see all these things. Now, these websites a lot of times are actually rated. So you can see just how many great areas there are where you can go out and enjoy yourself. In the winter, the vast majority of these are not even charging. You can just go out and enjoy yourself and see whatever you want to see. But a great way to kind of support these parks, if you do like going out and hiking and you start to enjoy visiting these various parks, a great way to kind of support them is you can get the National Park Pass, or you can get an annual park pass. I just want to get a real example for what the cost of that is. Yeah. So the annual pass for the federal park system is $80. I know for the New York State Park system, it's right around the same price. I buy both every year. I don't really think about the price anymore. A perfect example of this is if you ever go to Jones Beach to go to the beach, and a lot of beaches in New York State are actually New York State parks. So if you're paying $12 to park there and you go there 5 times a summer, you're basically canceling out the same cost. Whenever you buy the annual park pass, it allows you to go into the state park and park there for free. That's really all they charge you for in these parks. Everything else is kind of very, very low cost or basically free. They might have a pool, or they might have canoeing or kayaking or things like that you can rent out. But this kind of gives you a good baseline to go for. And normally having these annual park passes do give you a discount on any of the other things that you plan to do in the park that day. So there are other advantages of it, but I do promise you, you'd be surprised how often you end up saving money and how much having these park passes do kind of push you to get out there and do something. Um, I I normally would go to the beach, every other week during the summer, just trying to get out there, enjoy the sun, and enjoy the environment. But when you already bought the pass, you don't have to worry about how much it's going to cost. I found myself, I go fishing once a week, I go to the beach once a week. So I'd end up at the beach 2 to 3 times a week, even if it was just for a few hours, because I no longer have to worry about parking for $12 if I'm only going to go there for 3 hours. Now I can just go and come and go as I please, and I can just enjoy myself for the flat rate. So little thing that we want to point out there and just kind of talk about. As you kind of explore outside of your neighborhoods and outside of the immediate areas, you might want to look onto a really good app called All Trails. Another good example of this is like the Strava or even the Nike Run app. You can see what people in your area are doing and what areas they're choosing to exercise. So it might give you new ideas of routes that you can do. The All Trails app is actually a really great app where pretty much by your current location, it's going to tell you in whatever radius you'd like, here's easy, moderate, and very hard hikes that you can go on. And they're going to be, again, in all the various state, county, federal parks all around your area. And it's hikes and walks that people go on regularly. It's already routed out for you. It already has a map of everywhere that you're going to go. And it's really, really easy and really, really approachable. The best part about this is that it also helps you explore your community, as there might be a nature walk that is 5 miles away from you that you have no idea exists because it's in a small park that doesn't seem like there's much to it. But the only reason that this park exists is because it actually was a bunch of nature trails that came together and they just put in a basketball hoop and a play set for kids because there were people around there all the time. You'll notice that a lot of these parks started out as being just nature walks, but because there were so many nature walks finishing and starting in the same area and so many people coming to these, they ended up just putting a park there because it made the most sense. It's where people were congregating to do this. So you'd be shocked by how many of these simple parks in the city and in various places actually have numerous 5K, 10K, 12K, numerous distances of different types of hikes, everything from really, really easy to very, very hard. So again, just check out those apps, see if there's anything that you'd like and things of that nature. When we go outside of kind of hiking and camping and things like that, we start to talk about things that, depending on your area, you want to start looking into what kind of clubs and what kind of activities are kind of centered in your area. Just talking from obviously being the tri-state, specifically Queens, you'll notice there's a lot of a lot of boating and biking coming out of Flushing Park. Flushing Meadow Park has a nice little pond there. They have sailboats you can rent out. They have boats you can rent out, paddle boats, rowboats, you name it. But they really do have a really good collection of various things you can do in that area. Stemming from that, they also have a number of different things like kayak rentals and other things and bike rentals that are right there sitting in the park for you to do. These are things that, again, if you don't get out and look for, you'd never know that they existed. It's a great way to try out new activities outdoors and see what sticks and see what you enjoy and kind of see what you'd like to grow from there. I always recommend that if any of these hobbies, really, like kayaking, sailing, surfing, paddleboarding, snowboarding, skiing, you name it, any outdoor sport that you enjoy, there is almost always a place where you can rent it out and give it a try in a very easy, approachable way. Even mountain biking. You can just look up mountain bike rental and you'll find a ton of bike shops that might say, hey, like, this is a very beginner trail. We are a bike shop that's right near a bunch of biking trails. And we'll go on a guided tour where you get to mountain bike and check things out. This is a great way to try out new activities at a very, very cost-effective manner. And you don't have to kind of do large investments to see if you like something. If you do it 3 or 4 times and you feel like you got the bug and you're like, man, I love this and it's really, really enjoyable, the reason that we're talking about these things is that then you can make an investment that you can continue doing this in your everyday life. And most of the activities that we're talking about all have really good clubs and different support in your area that's going to get you to continue to be motivated and find people to exercise with. Running is really, really famous for that because you can always go to the Road Runners Club. You can always do almost every county has its own running club just for people that love to run and they want to have various routes and they want to feel safe while they're running. They'd rather run in slightly larger groups so they're seen. They want to make sure that they learn about new areas that they can run in. And if they want to try and challenge new distances, they want to have someone with them in case they get into trouble. They'll have someone else to make sure that they can get help. There's a lot of advantages to joining these clubs because it can be very motivating, but it also can help you stay motivated as you start to kind of teeter off. And that doesn't mean that once you join a club, you're forced to do it forever. But again, we're just trying to gain that awareness that there are a ton of different resources out there for things that you can see. Again, we talk a lot about the Strava app is a really good one for that as well, because it allows you to check your data, whether you're like hiking, biking, running, you can kind of track it all. And when you see what other people are doing, you'll see, oh, they did this and they biked here. Oh, they kayaked there. Oh, they were in a boat here. And they can do all these different activities and kind of share it with everyone else that's around them. And you can see what the specific things that they're doing in their area. Again, the All Trails app does that as well. You can specifically go into your searches and say, I want hiking trails that are okay that if you bike, and they'll give you a list of trails that are in your area, and you can order them from best to worst or however you like, or easy to hard. And you can say like, oh, people also mountain bike these, people also run these. These are really good for jogging and running, or these are really primarily good for hiking. The difference that I talk about there could be, well, is it paved or is it unpaved? Is there a really, really set trail where they pack down everything, or is everything very, very loose and it'd be very challenging to run or hike on for long periods of time? So those are things that people think about ahead of time, and they kind of give you great examples of what will work and what won't work. And being in this area within an hour of the tri-state area, I mean, not only will you find things like the Appalachian Trail, but you'll find hundreds and hundreds of different parks that you can go to and experience, going all the way out to the Hamptons. Because again, even out there in the Hamptons, a lot of these beautiful beaches and beautiful parks are still state. You know, that they're just regular state parks that are maintained, and they do a great job. So one of the last things we want to touch on, again, because it's cold weather, but also this is another great way to kind of like enjoy your surroundings. A lot of us only do sightseeing and only see a lot of the national sites when we're very, very young. A lot of these sightseeing sites, whether it be New York City, Niagara Falls, Philadelphia, wherever you'd like to go, they have a ton of different, I don't want to say walking tours, because again, we're trying to get away from really paying for doing activity, but they have a ton of different activities in a very small area. So if you were to go to Philadelphia or DC or wherever the areas you'd like, you could spend a day just walking through museums. You could spend a day just checking out art galleries. You could spend a day just looking at ghost hunting tours, or going somewhere like Gettysburg and seeing ghost hunting tours, or checking out historical sites. There's a lot of cool things that you can do to get out there and enjoy yourself in any type of weather, to really kind of think out of the box and do different things. One of the best vacations I ever went on is I went for a weekend to Gettysburg, and we spent half the weekend doing guided tours, the other half where you just kind of go out on your own, you don't pay for a thing, you just see what there is to offer. A lot of these areas have a lot of tourist attractions that even though you've lived there for a long time, it's different to experience the Empire State Building as an adult than it is to do as a child. It's different to experience Ellis Island and all these different things. Almost all of these amenities, even like zoos and things like that, they almost always have a free day, or they always have some kind of campaign where you could buy one pass to see all of them, and it comes out to really, really cost effective or completely free. It's also, like I said, you have things like Central Park and these famous areas that you may have went as a child, but you haven't been there recently. There's a lot of free things that you can go out and explore and just kind of stay active and enjoy yourself for a day without spending any money, and still have a wonderful experience. And I think we need to kind of stress that, because as we're in this kind of life where like we have computers and we have phones, we have all these things, we get so caught up in like ratings of things and different things of that nature, and that we automatically think like, oh, well, why would I do a touristy thing? Well, as a New Yorker, I can't tell you the last time I've been to the Empire State Building. I can't tell you the last time I've done anything really touristy in New York. Um, and that's going back all the way to probably like 12 years and under. There's a lot of fun things that you can check out to kind of get to know your city better, to get to know your area better. And there's so many interesting historical things you can learn about if you're willing to kind of learn about your area and just go out and see what there is. Um, I think that's kind of the point of getting in exercise and being outdoors is kind of learning something new that you may not have known before. So it may be learning something different about the beaches. It may be learning something different about maybe a lighthouse in your area. There's a million different areas that you can kind of go in and learn and get a better fascination for, and just kind of expand upon yourself in a great way. If there's anything that we've kind of missed on in this talk, again, like always, throw it down in the comments and ask about it. There's a ton of activities to go outside and kind of be adventurous. There's a ton of different things that like you may have seen in a movie that you've never thought of trying. One of the things I just want to mention here, I've been told a million times over that skydiving in Long Island is one of the most gorgeous places to skydive in the entire world, because you're lucky enough to skydive and you can see all the way down to the city and see the skyline, but you also see the gorgeous beaches going all the way down to the Hamptons and Montauk. They say besides there, going to somewhere like the Philippines and Hawaii are literally the best in the world. These are things that you just don't know unless you kind of go out there and say, like, I would like to try new experiences. I'd like to kind of get more outside of my own comfort zone and try new things. Obviously, these are just kind of out there examples. But even if it's bird watching, I think you'd be shocked about how many endangered species might be in your area, how many rare things that you may have taken for granted or not noticed. And now you get to learn so much more about. And then, of course, if you have pets or if you have different things at home, you can do this along with them and really get a greater appreciation and a greater bond with that animal. Going on hikes with your dog or going out bird watching and learning more about your pets or things of that nature helps you kind of grow in those areas and helps build up those bonds a little bit that you may not have thought of before. So a lot of, like always, these videos just kind of encourage you, try something new, check something out. Next week, we will be talking about exercising at home. We'll be going a ton into different apps, a ton into different exercise programs, listing just as many things as we can to kind of get you started and motivated. Winter's coming. We know a lot of people want to stay indoors. We still want to let you know there are a lot of things to do outdoors, and this is a great time to buy all your outdoor gear. I know I'm already looking to buy a stand-up paddleboard right around Christmas time because that is when they all go on sale. I've already bought a ton of kayaking gear now that season kind of already ended and everything got clearanced, and all the rental stuff from REI and things like that, they started selling. Got a ton of stuff for like 25% of its normal price. So I'm super excited going into next year already. I know I'm going to have a great summer with all the things I was able to pick up this winter, but I still have a ton of different activities that I can do this winter and have a lot of fun with. And obviously the inverse works as well. Right as winter starts to end and it starts to get a little sunny, that's when you look to try to grab those end of year sales for skis, different snowboards, snowshoes, sleds, whatever it is that you like. Kind of go out, enjoy yourself, see what you like. All right. Finally, the last thing we're doing 2 weeks from now, I believe it's going deep into sleep. Really, really great talk we're going to talk about there. A lot of helpful hints for how to change and better your sleeping habits. So again, if you're available, try to hit a recording or try to join us live. Next week is going to be working out at home. The week after that's going to be going deep into sleep. All right, great to see you guys again, and we'll see you guys soon.